Hello, and welcome to another episode of Zapped with Knowledge with your hosts, Gavin Friedman and Kate Zapp. Today, we're going back to 19th century Europe with the Industrial Revolution. We will take you on a journey through China and Japan to Germany and Great Britain, looking in depth at how industrialization shaped and changed countries along with movements it set in place.
Now, a frequently asked question is, how did industries affect the world at this time? Advancements in industry led to new possibilities in production. Industry all started to grow during the Industrial Revolution, and because of the revolution, cities grew incredibly. During this time, the industrial growth in the United States created a very wealthy class full of entrepreneurs, along with a comfortable middle class. This was due to the hard-working backs of immigrants from all around the world that the Industrial Revolution pulled in. However, the working class held a heavy burden on their backs so the upper classes could live their luxurious lives. Jane Addams, a wealthy woman who lived in Chicago, held a party at a group home she founded, and while she passed out candy to little girls, she was shocked when they quickly refused. Addams wrote, "The girls had worked from 7 in the morning until 9 at night at a candy factory, and they were sick of the smell." Besides the struggles of long hours, steel production played a major factor in the United States. Steel made the railroads, and the railroads were responsible for great economic production boosts due to their speed and how much weight they could transport. Railroad lines expanded from 35,000 miles in 1865 to 254,000 miles in 1916. These miles of railroads changed the natural environment in the West, and, however, did eventually lead to conflicts with the Native Americans who had lived there before Europeans colonized the country. It wasn't just the steel industry that changed production. The chemical industry also allowed for new possibilities. With chemicals, new types of fertilizers were created, and this made farmers be able to produce more food for the growing population. This also led to less famines. Chemicals also create destruction instead of creating new life. Alfred Nobel created chemicals to create TNT to blow up mountains so railroads could be placed through them. However, the TNT was later placed into wars and battles. This was not Nobel's original plan when he created TNT. Along with steel and chemicals, electricity changed the production world as well. The discovery of electricity can date back all the way to the 18th century by a German scientist named Stephen Gray. He studied how to generate electricity. You may be more familiar with Benjamin Franklin, but he discovered that electricity was a naturally occurring force. Early developments in electric power helped industries have the power to hold the great force of electricity and transport it from point A to point B. In the 1860s, electric power began removing steam power as a major power resource for industries during the Second Industrial Revolution. Other inventors' work led to the creation of many media industries, such as telecommunications and the radio industry. These advancements helped lead the world to new possibilities.
Now, let's move on and take a look at how advancements in transportation and communication affected the trade, migrations, and global interactions. With the Industrial Revolution came advancements in transportation and communication, seen in the new technologies such as steam engine and the telegraph. In transportation, a large advancement was the invention of the steam engine, which was used in both ships and trains. These steamships were effective in trade since they could travel more effectively and carry heavier loads, seen in transporting grain, meat, and large amounts of raw metals needed for industrialization. This impacted trade within the countries who had access to these steam engines because they could now ship large amounts of goods to and from other countries they traded with. Also, those countries could acquire larger amounts of raw materials within these steamships, helping fuel the factories and create a larger output of goods. The steam engine was also used in the invention of the train. One of the first railroad systems using steam power was seen from Liverpool to Manchester, two large cities in England. The opening of this commercial railroad was very popular, allowing for passengers to easily travel from one city to another. One of the first passengers was a journalist from the Penny magazine, describing the ride as a very pleasurable wonder that takes possession of the mind, as we glide along at the speed equal to the gallop of a racehorse. The popularity of this railroad led to more railroad systems opening up all across Western Europe, where the steamships transported goods and materials across ocean. These railroads could ship goods very effectively over land to large trade ports, helping advance European trade. Along with vessels for transportation opening up during the Industrial Revolution, there were canals being built to speed up transportation. A popular canal was the Suez Canal. This canal connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea and gave European countries a faster access point by boat to Asian countries in the east. such as India. An excerpt from Sven Beckert's Empire of Cotton describes how a journey on the steamer from Bombay to Liverpool was accomplished in 21 days thanks to the newly opened Suez Canal. This opened new trade routes and cut transportation almost in half. But these advancements in transportation were the only thing the Industrial Revolution brought. There were also communications. New advancements in communications, mainly seen as the telegraph. The telegraph was a large benefactor in trade also, due to the fast communicator supply and demand from other countries. The telegraph changed the communication of messages from taking days and even months in some cases to only taking minutes. Once the telegraph became a more well-known invention, it became popular around the world. There was even a telegraph line put in to communicate with the Americas. This telegraph even helps to stabilize the textile market in Britain, since they got cotton from the Americas. With the use of the telegraph, they could relay information about the textile market to the Americas, telling how much and when to ship cotton. The telegraph was also used to communicate knowledge of wars and battles around the world. This faster and more efficient communication led to the world as a whole being more connected, with ideas and news traveling much faster than ever before.
In Germany, the Industrial Revolution started nearly a century after Britain's. This was due to Germany not being a unified state due to a power conflict with Prussia and Austria. A main unification factor in Germany was Zollverein, which was a customs union of German states. This linked many Prussian and other German territories together, and throughout time other places joined in. Another factor that helped unify the German states was that tolls were abolished across the borders, which helped form a common market. This also helped reduce barriers across the German states and improve transporting materials across the land, which made those items cheaper. These actions encouraged more trade, buying, and selling, which helped the country lead to industrialize more. In 1871, Germany became united under the Chancellor of Germany. This meant more goods and natural resources could be distributed. Also, unification helped Germany become less vulnerable to social, political, and military attacks. To increase more trade, the government helped by placing foreign tariffs on trade, and the money raised from those tariffs would be placed back into society through health insurance, accident insurance, and old age pension. This was the first country to ever have these economies to their civilians. Another person who unified the country was a man named Otto von Bismarck. Bismarck did many things for Germany. He brought the economy into line, made sure the economy stayed that way, encouraged it, prevented anything from hurting the economy badly, and got support from industry and skilled workers. A way Germany advanced so quickly was through education. Germany held classes that emphasized on tech areas of industries. This made people be able to make the best technology. These factors made Germany become so popular, people moved there and their population grew, and this meant more people to help the state industrialize. With this in mind, they were able to manufacture thousands of miles of railroads. This increased efficiency because everything got to places faster, and this meant business also sped up. With the rail system increase and the demand for steel and coal, this gave stimulus to the economy due to steel being created in Germany. You might be wondering, how did Germany differ from other industrializing countries? Well, Britain was the first country to start industrializing, so this meant it was easy for them to be in the lead in this revolution. This meant the other countries had to play catch-up. Countries needed to find and create new and efficient ways of life to catch up to Britain. This is why Germany had rapid growth and Britain slowed down. Britain didn't focus on much on technological education, infrastructure, or focus on basic education like Germany. Germany's central government was involved more due to the fact that they needed to catch up with Britain. Another factor is that Britain did not lend money to businessmen because they were afraid they would not pay them back, whereas Germany lent money and created the credit bank. All these reasons were due to Germany needing to catch up with Britain, so the government and the banks coordinated efforts to increase the industry. Britain also lacked Bismarck, who unified the country, and many other great accomplishments. As you can see, Germany became a powerhouse in the 19th century.
Industrialization had impacts and effects on almost everything in the 1800s, including imperialism. The increased demand for raw materials essential to industrialization, such as metals and rubber, caused the needs to colonize this new land in order to exploit its resources and people. Inventions of industrialization also made it possible for imperialism, since without the power of steam engines, the technology of new weapons, and creation of medicines, the Europeans could have never colonized and exploited those lands. These colonies created through imperialism gave European countries a source of rubber, oil, wood, iron, copper, and other necessary resources needed for industrialization. The more advanced colonies also gave European countries people to sell and trade their goods created with industrialization, too. Henry Stanley said to the Manchester Chamber of Commerce in 1884 that there are 40 million naked people beyond that gateway, and the cotton spinners of Manchester are waiting to clothe them. This is referring to the people of Congo. This shows how the people colonized by the European countries were seen as opportunities to profit off of. Not only that, but the inventions of industrialization helped them lead to imperialism. The power and efficiency from steamships led to faster transportation of goods and people. This advanced trade between colonies and the country colonizing them made it easier to get resources from colonies back to Europe. This advance in technology also gave colonists a feel of superiority over the native people. This led to colonists feeling like they were more justified to dominate the native people due to being superior. This mindset was seen in The White Man's Burden, a racist text that basically describes colored and native people as children who needed to be taught and colonized for their own good. It was also easier for the colonists to gain control over the land due to advanced technology, such as the Maxim machine gun and other types of advanced weapons. This invention of the machine gun and other superior weapons led to allow for a few thousand white men working for the king to dominate some 20 million Africans, according to Adam Hochschild, a journalist who visited Africa. The invention of new medical treatments also helped with colonization, since now the European colonists didn't have to worry as much about getting and dying from unknown diseases. Also, industrialization pushed for the need for imperialism because of the need for raw materials. Most machines of the Industrial Revolution needed materials such as iron and other metals, along with rubber. Most of rubber was acquired from colonizing African land, where rubber trees could be found. Also, the metals needed in factories were hoped to be found in the new land acquired through imperialism. This all adds up to show how the outcome of industrialization led to Europeans' need for imperialism.
In both countries, they were isolated from the outside world. Eventually, they both came under pressure to trade with the West. The Industrial Revolution created a massive gap between their advancements in life, and when Britain came over, they were quickly outmatched. In China, they struggled with the Western forces and they refused to yield to the West. This caused them to fail and struggle to modernize. Lord Napier, sent from Britain, tried to pressure China into opening more ports, but they refused because they believed anyone who wasn't like them was barbaric. Tensions grew and a naval battle between the two formed. Britain thought to weaken them they would illegally transport opium, a highly addictive substance, from India into China. The British hoped that the Chinese would get so addicted that they would have to trade with the British. The Chinese realized that a social and economic disruption had formed, and this caused the Opium Wars. The Chinese quickly became defeated due to their lack of industrialization, which led to unequal treaties with the British. Now, you may be wondering, why did China not know the change going on in the world and adapt with it? Well, Chinese rule discouraged scholarly dissent, and they were limited to texts written from the Ming Dynasty, a time before the Industrial Revolution. Those texts made them not realize about the change in the world. China's rulers failed to understand that the achievements of the West had been the product of deep structural changes, and that to modernize, it is necessary to adapt or change traditional institutions and ways of thought. Therefore, modernization in China occurred only at a very small level. Japan, however, was able to yield to Western pressure, and this allowed them to modernize successfully. In order to try to open up the Japanese ports, President Fillmore of the United States sends Commodore Perry and gives him with a letter that states, "The United States wishes for friendship, commerce, a supply of coal, and provisions." At first, the president's goal was only to receive goods for his boats that got shipwrecked on the emperor's shores, but his small wishes turned into a huge reality. 1 year later, Japan accepted their request and the ports were open. You may be wondering, why did Japan accept the terms and open up their ports? The reason is because of historical timing. Although isolated, they were informed about the Opium Wars and the costs and damage found in China. They quickly realized that they did not want to make the same mistake as China. Japan received their knowledge from the Dutch, who were the only group the Japanese accepted trade with. The Dutch quickly stuck on them. Japan quickly adapted to Dutch studies. Eventually, this led to the creation of institutes and schools around Japan, and unlike China, they were allowed to learn from whatever texts they wished. In Japan, there was an adapting authority, unlike China, who stuck to their old ways. Therefore, power was far less unified than in China, which caused them to fall more heavily when the British arrived.
And with the fall of China, because of their reluctance to industrialize, we wrap up our journey to the 19th century. We hope you enjoyed taking a deep dive into industrialization, its effects, and how the world reacted to it. Hope you enjoyed our episode of Zapped with Knowledge, and stay tuned for next week when we take a closer look at the French Revolution.